For this one, I'm going to turn it to you, Carol. You selected these trades and why?
What happened is we've been keeping track for many years as people have requested translators, and my exam administration manager Henry Duong, if I pronounced it wrong, I'm sorry, Henry, but he went through and researched over the last 20 years which exams had the most people asking for Spanish translators to sit in with them, and these were the 10 that they picked. This was our top 10, and we have more current data than you'll see on this slide, but we've had over 4,500 people take one or more of our Spanish translated exams in the time since we put them out. They're becoming very popular, and we are so glad to reach that population.
So with the next slide, it's not that expensive. We were able to pay PSI, who's our exam administrator, to translate the exams at a cost of approximately $60,000. We also have all the study guides that are translated into Spanish. And I think the cost for that was about $7,000. It wasn't too high. So money well spent. Now, one of the problems, though, that we see is that material that we don't control may not be in Spanish. So if you have to go to a code book, and Steve Pernelli's not here today, and I understand they're starting to translate code books into Spanish, but many of them are not translated. So that's a concern. Look at the pass rate. That's really low. With an oral translator, the pass rate is 15%. The written exam is 22%, but that's still too low. We need to get that up. English test takers are at 71%, I think? Now, so we have some work to be done. And Carol, I don't know if you want to wait to that slide or if you have any thoughts on this slide.
Well, some things that we have looked into is we did translate the study guides, but then we realized a lot of the references are still in English because, of course, we have 45 different trades that are out there that have people that are coming in to take their test. So we personally cannot translate all of them, but we hope that the trade associations will start doing that. We know IAPMO has said that they've done so for the California Plumbing Code. We're really excited about that. Another thing that we've done is that when our tests were translated, they were translated into formal, proper Spanish. Well, that's not necessarily what everyone who's working here in California speaks. So fortunately, I have 2 people in my exam development unit who are fully fluent in both Spanish and English and are now bilingual certified, and they're working on these exams with our subject matter experts who also are fully bilingual, and we just recruited subject matter experts in the trades to come work on those exams to say, what is the word you commonly use in the field when you're working on these projects, so we can get those words in there. And sometimes they've just said, put the English word back in there in parentheses because that's what their boss is going to call it. So we're working on that as we get more and more statistics to go along to make it more reachable. We just want to know if they know the material, not that they go study Spanish in Spain or in a formal school.
And so with future plans, one thing I wanted to mention as well, I think most of you are aware that we have monthly applicant workshops. We do those in English and in Spanish. So we have intention to continue to do those. But just to kind of further what Carol said, we need feedback from the applicants. Why is it they found the exam challenging? What more can we do to assist them? Do you want to comment a little bit on the survey? But before you do that, though, I do want to thank you and Henry Dong for the work that you did and your leadership in making this happen. Go ahead, Carol.
When we did do the survey, a lot of what we found is a lot of it was the references. It's just hard when they're trying to download the California Building Code and then run it through Google Translate into Spanish to try and study it. It's been tough for them. Or they're trying to find a school, one of the contractor schools, because they don't know where else to go to try and study this material, but the school only has so much. So it has been challenging for them, and that's a lot of the reason that they're mentioning that it's been tough.
I think that's it, but what are your future plans? Are you looking at other trades? We have the law and business, and we have 10 trade exams. What are you looking at in the future for this?
We are certainly willing to look at other trades. The only catch is that we only have one exam specialist who could work on them. And right now he has those 10 exams that he is the only one that can work on because he's the only one that can create versions and actually read them. So that's been part of our challenge. We tried to recruit another exam specialist who was bilingual in both languages, and we went through 3 rounds and couldn't find anybody. Everyone's like, I'll run it through Google Translate. And I'm like, no, not my exam. You're not going to. So that's been our challenge, is just finding staff members that are able to do the exam development work. But we are willing to consider more exams if we have that opportunity.
Yeah, we'd be happy to answer any questions or maybe share any comments you may have regarding this program.
I have a question.
Sure.
Do we the translation is for the online exam, correct?
No, this would be for the in-person. We don't have online exams in California, so test takers must appear in person.
Okay.
Yeah. Right now, well, before this, what many of them did is they would request a translator. And so that posed some problems because a translator could only do 1 exam in 12 months. So it can be hard to find a translator. But as you saw in that one slide, even with a translator, they're only passing 15% of the time. That is way too low of a benchmark. But Carol, maybe you want to just explain a little bit about how California is a little bit different than other states. We don't have open book exams in California. We work very closely with the construction industry and the trades to determine our questions. We're very focused on code requirements, especially green energy requirements that other states may not have. Would you like to comment on that?
Certainly. In California, as many of you contractors know who had to come in and take our test, they are closed book. So when you show up, that's all you get is just the test questions and your little calculator online and maybe a little thing to write down notes and do your calculations, and then you got to hand it back. And so it can be challenging for some people who are used to other states where they're allowed to do open book exams. Another thing that we do is we revise every single one of our exams every 5 years on a regular basis. And so we keep them as up to date as we can. The manufacturers they're racing ahead, but we're trying to catch up. And what we do is all of our work is done with subject matter experts, with active licensed contractors in that trade working with us. If you've ever been to headquarters on a workshop day, you'll see a whole group of contractors out in the lobby waiting to go into the exam development workshop rooms and work on our exams. Another thing that we do is every time the new codes come out, the new building codes, the new California plumbing code, the new California green code, we go in and we update every single one of our exams that has code questions. So we do that every 3 years in addition to revising the entire exam every 5 years. And California is a little different, as David said, because California has green building standards that we've had in place since 2010. They were suggested in 2008. They were like model code, and then they became code in 2010. We have those that we need to follow because California takes this very important. Another thing that we have is we have seismic codes that we have to follow because earthquakes happen out here. So those are things that are a little more special to California and California construction projects that wouldn't necessarily be considered in other states.
A question. Our test guides, those are online, correct?
Yes, ma'am. All of our study guides are online in Spanish and in English, both.
Do we have at times any applicants who have limited hearing ability?
We have, and if they do, they can request a reasonable accommodation. And so that is done through PSI, and they work out how to make it manageable for that person. And of course, because the exam itself, they see written words and they see the written answers, it's a little easier for someone who's hearing impaired. For someone who's vision impaired, and we have had a few candidates who've had that, we will provide them with a reader to read the exam to them.
The reason that I asked that question is that I have found through just some experiences of my own that the translation under closed caption in Spanish has been different than what they are saying, and it was completely different. So that's something that you may want to take a look at, it, just as a sample, just to test it out to see if the closed caption is actually saying what you want it to say, just to be cautious on that.
Thank you.
Any other board comments?
Yes, I had a question regarding what you might have mentioned this, Register David, the pass rate for the English version. What is that? The average?
For the English version?
Yes.
I think it was 71%, right, Carol?
For first-time test takers, yes, it's about 71% will pass the first time through. For repeat test takers, it's a little lower. A lot of times if they have to repeat it, maybe they'll get it the second time, maybe not. Maybe they'll take it multiple times.
Yeah,
So
one thing I would add is that you're not able to sit for the exam until we have vetted your application. So I know in some states they don't. You make an application, you just sit for the exam. You'll see their pass rates are much lower than California. The reason ours is higher, at least for English, is because we confirm before you sit for the exam that you do have the 4 years of journey level or greater experience. But 71%, that's not too bad. 15% is not too good.
Any other board comments? Any public comments? Yes, could you come up to the microphone up there?
We have a mic?
Might as well. Go ahead.
Hi, Galvigal Eisen, RMO Agency. I have a question. Have you considered recording the questions for auditory learners? Because it may be a solution even for Spanish speakers that cannot read through all the questions, even in Spanish, but they would understand the information.
I have not, but it sounds like a good idea. I'll take a note of it and ask PSI exams if it's a possibility.
Thank you for that input. Any other comments from the public? Seeing none, I will move into our next item, which is item number 8, review, discussion, and possible action on the 2025-2027 CSLB Strategic Plan objectives. And we will be interacting with this particular item. So please turn to page 73 of your packets. To discuss the strategic plan objectives. As you recall, on April 17, 2024, the first day of our 2-day meeting, we discussed and recommended new objectives for the next 3 years. The Department of Consumer Affairs has done the work of surmising that guided discussion, and what you have in your packet is between pages 74 and 84, and these are the objectives that came out of that discussion. For each of the CSLB's licensing and testing, enforcement, legislation, public affairs, and the executive divisions. If you adopt the objectives today, the respective committees will meet to discuss staff's implement plan and time frame. The plan will have completed benchmarks added to it, and you will receive the final 3-year strategic plan at the September board meeting. You will see some red strikeouts on pages 76, 79, and 82. These are some suggestive staff edits to the introduction section, the licensing and testing section, and the public affairs section. We can make additional edits or recommendations as we review the slides. However, I encourage a discussion from all members who are present at the strategic plan section to join us in walking through this and recommend, if needed, any additional edits. After we discuss all potential edits, we will request a motion to adopt the strategic plan with any edits we have identified. I am recommending that each committee chair introduce their division proposed objectives and then open the division objectives up for discussion. So we will begin on page 76.
Chairman.
Yes.
Okay, we begin on page 75 because we do have a correction there. It says Michael Mark, Vice President. It should be Vice Chair.
Okay.
Yeah, just want to mention that.
Okay, I will note on page 75 that correction. So then we will go to page 76, and I will read you'll see some staff proposed edits in there. Does anyone have any additional edits to this section? We'll just take a few minutes to read over the material. Does anyone see anything that they would like to discuss or talk about?
I'd like to ask the question, the text that is here was the text that was directly discussed and validated when we were in that day-long session, correct?
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to comment on that. So as you go through this, we received the material that's in your packet directly from Trish St. Clair and her colleagues, where we as staff made a change. We did a strikeout. We highlighted it. And so you're going to see this. So you're going to see exactly what they documented from that meeting, and then you'll see where staff is recommending a change, and you'll have to decide if you're in agreement or not, because there are a couple of significant changes that staff is recommending to the report that we received.
So I think that,
yeah, Chair Love. In goal 1, I assume we'll go by goal. Are we that far ahead? Am I too far ahead?
We're not at licensing yet.
My bad.
well, what I'd like to add here for those who were not in that famous day, was where a group came in and we actually came up with these as table suggestions, and they were discussed. And I thought they were remarkably efficient. I'm always leery of outsiders coming in and trying to design mission statements or whatever, but I thought they were very receptive, and they were changing it online as we were speaking, so that it's a comfort to know that this is the result of that. And it sounds as though, unless there are any other comments, that we need the active discussion on the red changes and whoever suggested those changes, why they wanted to make that change. Because I'm relying on the fact that this definitely represents, at the end of the day, we all agreed it was a great exercise, and we were glad that they recorded it live. But what I'd like to see is the logic behind the changes.
Well, we're doing one at a time, so we're at the executive part first, which is on page 76.
I could just comment on Board Member Grinzella's request. Absolutely, we'd be happy to share why we think there should be a change. But we're in agreement, I guess, with the first two here, that we're okay. And just to reiterate what Chair Love said, the goal today is to get approval for the goal. I shouldn't use the word goal twice, but that's really what it's about today, because it's going to go back to DCA's solid team to finalize the text, and then the committees are going to help implement a plan to include benchmarks to accomplish this.
Any other comments? Does anyone have any changes or discussion about where it says about the board on page 76? We okay with that one?
Good.
Okay. Then we will move on to licensing, and before we do that, in speaking with Registrar Pro, we need to take a 10-minute break. Okay, so we will be back at 2:30. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting back to order. And before we move into our next section, which is the board mission and values, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge Melissa Gear, who's hiding back there in the back, waving. She is from DCA, Department of Consumer Affairs, and Registrar Fote is going to say a few words on her behalf and tell you all about who she is.
Well, thank you, Chair Love. Melissa Gear is the Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations, and She's been instrumental in board member appointments, certainly answering my questions. And I just want to share a story about that relates to a cab ride 2 weeks ago. My phone rang, and it's Melissa Gear. She's in a cab going to San Francisco Airport, I think it was. And she says, I have great news. The cab driver has experience in construction. I think he had made an app, or he's going to make an app. Melissa's like, we got to get this guy licensed. I couldn't agree more, Melissa. But for a lot of our meetings, you've met Yvonne. Yvonne does report to Melissa, but I think you all recognize the fine work that she does and how instrumental she is in helping us keep our board positions filled and working with the governor's staff to accomplish that. And I don't know, Melissa, if you want to say a few words. I know she didn't ask to say a few words, but...
It is working. I just wanted to say thank you, Dave, and thank you, Chair, for those kind words. It is nice to be here with all of you. I know many of you I have helped through the Senate confirmation process, and for those of you that are new, that were appointed by the governor or just reappointed by the governor, we will be in touch because you will be going through the Senate confirmation process again. I look forward to working with all of you. I also would just like to thank Susan and David for their service and appreciate all that you have done, and also welcome Member Ruiz, who is new to the board, and look forward to working with you also. So thank you all, your great work, and look forward to continue working with you. Thank you.
Thank you for being here today. I'm going to go ahead and move us forward to page 78, which is the board mission and values. And we have no red strikeouts on that page. But I do want to say that I appreciate the fact that the board acknowledged and voted in to change the mission statement. The last few words on the ending was something that I proposed to include, because we do home improvement, and that was left out of our mission statement. So I'm glad to see it there. So if there are not any comments from either the board or the public, I will move forward. Does anyone have any comments? None? Okay. We will move forward to goal number 1, which is licensing and testing, which is on page 79. I'm going to turn that over to board member Miguel Galarza, and he's going to talk to us about all the red that you see on that page and why.
I'm going to defer over to David to start us out.
Yeah, I could be the responsible party here. So thank you, Member Galarza. When you look at 1.3, there's just a few things I would like to mention. One is the board has new statutory authority where if a contractor is subject to a disciplinary action, the registrar can issue an order requiring continuing education. We can do that, and if the contractor doesn't complete it by operation of law, we can revoke the license. We don't have to afford another hearing to the contractor. We can also require continuing education through our letter of admonishment program, which we've had for a few years. Specifically, we specifically have used that for permit compliance. Now, when you look at 1.3, I had, along with, I'll throw Mike here into this, but we just had a couple of questions, concerns about it. One is developing regulations. We don't currently have a mandatory continuing education statute at CSLB. We have no minimum experience requirement to obtain a license. So if we were to require contractors to take mandatory continuing education, it would be statutory, not regulatory. And I recall a number of years ago where the board did have a statute that required all licensees that did home improvement work to take and pass a home improvement certification. It was around 10 questions. It was a type of test where you can't get it wrong. You got to take it till you pass. I think we even gave the answers. Took it myself. I passed, fortunately. But the problem with that was it was less than 50% of our licensees that actually took it. So it was a huge enforcement problem. So that was some of the concerns as staff that we had with it. We think we already have the authority to require contractors that need to take continuing education to take that continuing education. And also I received a call from Alan Guy, who's the chair of the licensing committee, about this, and he expressed concern, and I asked that he speak to board member Miguel Galarza, who's representing the licensing committee chair today. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Miguel.
Yeah, as a member Guy and myself, we're both contractors, and he certainly is major concerned about the time, energy, and effort to prove what. So he was very much opposed to continued education. However, in our discussions, there was some thought about the compulsing people who have done violations to get them re-educated as part of the healing process and the correctionary process of moving forward back into good standings with CSLB. And I thought that made sense. I think that makes sense. In addition, I think that as opposed to make it compulsory, to make testing voluntarily, make it a voluntary thing. So, some of us that don't have good memories, we forget after 30 years of being in business, the lien laws and so forth. So if you had an opportunity to do a brush up from the state on a voluntary basis and give these tests so that contractors can stay up to date voluntarily, I think that may be a good way to improve the baseline on our contractors.
The board have a comment?
So on Miguel's comment, is that just for disciplinary action? It's going to be voluntary for the employer or for the contractor to take the continuing education, or maybe I didn't understand.
The amendment would make it mandatory if we've identified that you've not performed your trade appropriately, or if you've engaged in some type of business practice that wasn't lawful. It would be mandatory. But for the other contractors, what we would do is it would be part of our outreach campaign to the industry, where we would let contractors know about, I probably should mention some of these programs, but there are training programs out there that they could voluntarily take, and they could use that as part of their marketing. And I know a lot of associations have put together continuing education. Now, the problem, of course, if they were here, they would tell you that not all their member contractors or contractors with their classification are willing to take that continuing education. But just to answer your question, the proposed change is to only make it mandatory when we've identified a violation.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Any other board comments?
The only other comment is I do want to stress the importance of the work that David's been doing on the translation when it comes to licensing, and staff has been doing in licensing, to prevent the roadblocks for people that, are ESL that are currently on the underground because they're afraid to fail that test. And so creating that pathway is great work that we're doing to get more people licensed. So again, that item being number one is important.
I have a question. So the continuing education, those aren't classes that CSLB offers right now, right? So it's a whole new curriculum that would need to be developed. And
well, the Contractors Board doesn't offer any continuing education courses, with one exception. We actually have a course for permit compliance that we developed internally, and we've been using that for a few years. The prior building official on the board was Nancy Springer, and the California building officials helped us develop that continuing education course. But other courses we don't have them, but there's private industry that does. And so there's a lot of, let's say that you're a pool contractor and you need to have a better understanding how to plaster your pool. Well, there's a pool association that has continuing education courses. They have facilities already established that you could go to and take their course. So there's a lot of courses out there that could be taken, and we have the authority to require our licensees to do it right now, but only if we include that as part of a disciplinary action, a letter of admonishment, or an accusation.
So through the chair, if I may, so these continuing education requirements, would that mean the cooperation between associations that have these? In other words, would they be responsible for signing off saying this contractor has completed this, or how's that relationship?
Yeah, the way it's worked for us to date is that we just need to see completion, that you took the course and that you completed the course. So that would be a requirement that you showed that you were able to complete that course. I think the courses do vary. I know that on a national level, many states there's a training platform that some of you probably are familiar with here that has a whole lot of training courses, and you can take these courses, you can take this training virtually. And so you would require that they can show completion of that course. I would just say, I think we all support having well-trained contractors for sure. The question, though, is whether or not you want, as part of this, to go pursue it statutorily. It's not, you can't do it by regulation. Regulation would define a statute that doesn't exist. So we're going to have to, if you want to make it mandatory, it's going to be a bit of an uphill climb because currently we don't have any minimum education requirement. But it's not that you couldn't then send it to the ledge committee. It's going to be up to all of you to decide how you want to proceed with this. If you don't support these strikeouts, then it would seem logical that you would refer this to the ledge committee to explore legislation to statutorily require continuing education in some fashion.
Any other comments from the board? Any public comments?
You have a public.
Okay. Gal Bigel-Eisen, RMO Agency. I think that's a great direction, Mr. Foth. My recommendation is if you do require continuing education, is you require it from all the key people in the company, so not just the qualifier, but the president of the company and anybody else who's listed on the license, because all these individuals are able to sell and represent the company with homeowners. So my concern is only if the qualifier goes through the continuing education, some of the major key players in the business are not going to get the benefit of that. So just a recommendation regarding that requirement for companies that have shown they've had issues in the past. So I think that's a good direction.
So I have one other comment. This is a strategic goal that says develop regulations. So the next step would be in that process, without parameters, without rules in here, the developed regulations would be a part of the ongoing strategic plan, and the committee would be reporting back to us to ultimately define what those requirements would be. So I'm in favor of accepting the change that is here pursuant to our being informed on how the regulations are developed.
And through the chair, one other comment. To my understanding, this is partly with disciplinary action. If a contractor is actually not doing something properly, let's say unworkmanlike conduct, something not trades-like on the job for their classification, that was part of this continued education too, right? I thought that was kind of like the main component of this as a disciplinary action. You did something wrong. We had to go to mediation with a consumer. Now, please take this continued education class so you understand what's the real way to do that particular project.
Yeah, and I think a real benefit to enforcement is the development of regulations with our existing statutory authority. That would be huge for we call it our case management staff, when they're looking at perhaps settling an accusation or what kind of discipline to impose. We hear the letter of admonishment appeals in-house. So this could all be part of it. If you had regulations saying you had we call it a 7109A, it's a general poor workmanship violation, you're going to have to take one of these courses and show us proof of completion. It's going to be part of it. If you want to keep your license, that's what you got to do. So those regulations would be very helpful, because right now, I'm going to throw it to Steve. I'll go ahead and speak for Steve, and I'll throw it to him. No, I think part of it is the staff sometimes are not sure what to do with these, and to have clear direction would be helpful. But Steve, do you want to comment on it?
Yeah, it would be very helpful with the letter of admonishment program. We've been using it for a couple of years now. It's been very successful, saved a lot of money, not having to go through citation appeals, and yeah.
One more question. So with the recommendations of using the existing organizations that have that training, are we going to make recommendations to where they go, or leave it up to them to find who they should solicit?
No, yeah, what I would suggest is part of the regulatory rulemaking process that we identify the platforms that currently exist. I'm a member, as Margie Green, our executive officer from Nevada, is here with us. We've been both affiliated with the National Association of State Contractor License Agencies for years. And so we know that states, they use certain education providers. They exist, they're vetted, the states are comfortable with them. So that's what we would do through this process, is say these are your options. You don't necessarily have to go to this training facility, but you've got 3 you can pick from, but you got to complete it with one of them.
Any other comments? Board or public? No? Okay. Licensing and testing. Dave alluded that Margie Green was here today with staff from Nevada, and she will be joining us tomorrow, day 2, for a joint meeting. But I just wanted to say hello and extend a hello to her and to staff. Thank you for being here. So we'll move forward into on page 79, on page 80, which is enforcement objectives. And before I turn it over to Jim Marine, I know that there are no strikeouts, and I know that Michael Mark is going to be commenting on item 2.4, so I'll turn it over to Jim.
All right, thank you. It's good, no strikeouts.
Excuse me, Chair.
Yes.
There was no vote?
It's at the end.
Not yet.
At the end.
At the end. My bad again.
When we're done with the entire strategic plan, there'll be a vote to accept the plan as revised.
All right, under enforcement, as you can see, there's 4 bullet points. They're all very important. We hashed it over a long period of time at our last meeting. And just in general, enforcement helps reduce, eliminate, or prevent unlicensed activity and unprofessional conduct that pose a threat to public health, safety, and welfare. So I'll ask you to read the 4 bullet points and see if you have any issues or questions, and then I'll give it over to Michael. I believe you have a comment, Michael.
Sure. Thank you, Jim. Yeah, I think 2.4, when we're talking about partnerships and different, there's a lot of labor management cooperative trusts that are out there that are actually doing a lot of compliance work and in the industry, as well as contractor associations who are trying to figure out and take the bad apples out of our industry. So a really great goal of enforcement is being able to leverage those partnerships with CSLB Speaking on point, Enforcement Chair Ruane attended a meeting with Sheet Metal Workers 104 and our compliance team and trying to figure out ways to better streamline the process of a consumer seeing actual complaint real time and getting that information to enforcement staff. So there are so many individuals that are out there. I know the Carpenters has a really good LMCT, the UA, laborers, electricians, almost all the entities and associations have a joint labor management team that is trying to get these bad players. So we just need to leverage those partnerships and make it easier to work together with CSLB.
Thank you, and I just want to chime in on that too. I brought it up before. There's an untapped or pretty much untapped resource there of contractors associations. Mine alone, Wall and Ceiling, has 97 contractors representing literally hundreds of thousands of wall and ceiling applicators throughout the state of California, and they want to do what's right, and they know these contractors that aren't doing things right. So it's a resource there, not just for knowledge and enforcement, but also potentially financially for the license board to help us out doing the kinds of things. These contractors know, they know who's good, they know who's bad, know who's doing a good job and who isn't, and who should be cited for it. Because if we don't do that, we as good contractors are subsidizing their existence, and it's tough enough to work out there now. So back to you, Chair Love. Thank you.
Any other board comments? Any public comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to legislation. And again, there are no strikeouts. However, Michael Mark will be presenting these objectives.
Thank you, Chair Love. Yeah, at our meeting, we spent probably 45 minutes going over these goals of legislation for the next, the strategic plan years. So there's the 5 bullet points here, and I'm not going to read them. They're right in front of us, but everyone had a chance to have their input at our last meeting, and there was no changes from staff, recommended changes from staff. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from the board? Any questions or comments from the public? Seeing none, we will move on to page 82, which is public affairs, and there are lots of red.
Catherine to speak to that.
Okay. I'm told that Catherine is going to speak to this item.
Thank you, Chair Love. So I will say for the the first part, where essentially the goal statement at the top, we had some language that we had talked about in the strategic planning meeting, and then once Tricia St. Clair sent it back to us, she had provided an updated one that kind of consolidated that statement to be more inclusive, more clear, and so it's very close to the same statement that it was before, but it's, like I said, a little more concise. And so we have that for the goals statement up top, and then you'll see, like I said, a lot of strikeout down below. What came out of that is we had 3 different outreach items, and as we work through our outreach, we wanted to make sure it was all included as one item, because a lot of it is overlapping between the 3rd, 4th, and I believe it was the 5th one on there. We realized we could put all that language within one item, and so we did that just to show that our outreach is very inclusive. It includes the industry, it includes consumers, and it includes, you know, future contractors, that kind of thing. So we thought by consolidating them all, it would be more focused and also easier for us all to achieve, because we can work with industry, we can work with consumers, and we can work with possible future licensees as well. If anyone has any questions, just let me know.
And Miguel, do you have anything to add to it?
She made it very concise.
Okay, thank you. Any board comments? Any comments from the public? Seeing none, we will move to the next goal. And the next goal is on page 83, and there are no red strikeouts. However, I do have something to read. As chair of the executive committee, I will discuss the executive strategic objectives. As you will see here, the executive office is very focused on staff recruitment, development, training, and engagement, which these objectives reflect, as well as process improvements to better serve the public. The IT division is working with the enforcement division and licensing division to explore and purchase software solutions like SharePoint and Box for digitizing the handling and processing of what is largely still a paper-based process. These efforts go hand in hand with the purchase of the online application software you heard about in the IT update for licensed applicants to submit applications online. So please quickly read over the 4 points, and are there any board comments? Any public comments? Okay, seeing none, I wanted to thank all of you for your input and your discussion and your suggestions. Everything that we do here is important to, and your voices are important to hear your strategies and what you're thinking about. We're all thinking about consumers, we're thinking about seniors, we're thinking about all the contractors as well and all the different entities, so thank you for that. So at this time, we need a motion to approve the 2025-27 strategic plan with the changes that we discussed here today as read. And I will read the following. The technical edits in the About Board section on page 76. The revision to the objective in licensing and testing on page 79 to clarify that continuing education will be an element of continuing disciplinary authority, not a licensing requirement. And on page 82, the technical edit to the public affairs description and the consolidation of 2 similar objectives into one that emphasizes outreach and partnerships with building departments, state agencies, and industry groups to educate consumers and contractors. So with that, could I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay,
I think there is one more amendment of page 75 as well. The vice president to vice chair.
Oh, right. I remember that one. We discovered that today. It's for
No, yes, and I said all the changes and amendments.
There was a change on 75 just to correct vice president to vice chair.
Okay, we will include that in the updated motion for all the changes, including page 75 from Michael Mark as vice president to vice chair. So the motion was...
So moved.
Second.
Okay, you guys are going quickly on me here. Miguel and Jim. Okay. Any other comments from the board or the public? Okay, Robin, will you call the roll?
Diana Love.
Yes.
Joel Barton.
Aye.
Rodney Cobos.
Aye.
Miguel Galarza.
Aye.
Amanda Gallo.
Aye.
Susan Granzella.
Aye.
Alan Guy, excused absence. Jacob Lopez.
Aye.
Michael Mark.
Aye.
Henry Nutt.
Aye.
Steve Pinelli has an excused absence. Jim Ruane.
Aye.
Thomas Ruiz.
Aye.
Mary Tucker has an excused absence. Motion passes.
Thank you, Robin. And just to put on record, that vote, this will extend to staff the authority to review their strategic objectives with the Department of Consumer Affairs, as well as the relevant committees of the board for finalization of the report. So thank you all. So at this time, we will move into legislation, which is on page 87 and leading through legislation portion of the meeting. I will turn it over to Committee Chair Michael Mark.
Thank you, Chair Love. So we have a doozy here, a lot to talk about. So everyone, please bear with me. So we're turning to page 89 first. That's the agenda. We're gonna work through 4 items here. first. So starting off, my name is Michael Mark, Legislative Committee Chair and also Vice Chair. We will begin with the legislative item 1. Review, discussion, and possible action on 2023 to 2024 pending legislation. So now we're going to turn to page 91 of your packet. And the first bill up for discussion, Assembly Bill 2622 Carrillo. This bill relates to the minor work exemption in the contractor's law. Existing law says that a contractor's license is required for any project valued at $500 or more in labor and materials. The board may recall our discussion of this bill at the April meeting when the bill would have provided a license exemption up to $5,000. And during that time, our board opposed that bill. The bill has been amended now, and it now increases the minor work exemption to $1,000. It also includes a number of consumer protection limitations for which the work may be performed without a license under $1,000. Under the bill currently in print, the following work under $1,000 won't qualify for the exemption, even if the work is valued at less than $1,000. Again, as the bill currently reads, a $1,000 minor work exemption does not apply if that work requires a permit, if the work includes fire protection, asbestos, or well drilling, it involves any structural or load-bearing changes to a building, it involves behind-the-wall electrical, mechanical, or plumbing work. Again, this would generally require a permit, and just to clarify, it doesn't have to be behind the wall. That was just a for example. If the person employs anyone, this is important because unlicensed contractors rarely obtain workers' compensation insurance, and insurers are reluctant to provide workers' compensation insurance to an unlicensed contractor. And if the person doesn't state in their advertisements they're unlicensed. This means that business cards, internet, or other advertising must state the unlicensed. The bill currently includes a provision that requires the board to adjust the $1,000 every year in accordance with inflation. However, it's my understanding that the author's office has committed to removing that portion in the next committee hearing. That the bill has been amended since the board last reviewed it. As you may recall, the board took an opposing position on the bill. Since the bill has been amended, this is an opportunity for the board to review whether they want to take a different position. So let's open it up for discussion. Are there any board member comments or questions on this item? And maybe I'll maybe turn it over to Michael Jaminski. There was some newer information about the CPI that maybe didn't get into this bill, or maybe we can speak a little bit on that. That's like kind of newer information that we heard yesterday.
Yeah, so this CPI provision. So right now, what's in there is the bill as written would require the board to upgrade the threshold amount every year in accordance with the CPI. It's my understanding that the author's office has committed to removing that provision. So that's my understanding.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Michael. I think that's what I heard yesterday, so that clarifies that. Is there any board comments on this bill? Is any public comment on this bill? So if you turn to staff recommendation in the packet on page 92, on the very bottom of page 92, the staff recommendation is to support the measure. Does anyone want to make that motion? I think, and I'll just speak a little bit on this too, I think it was very helpful. Chair Love was working with the assembly member on this bill. We had great input from our last board meeting from all the stakeholders, and that's why I believe they were able to come together and have these amendments and actually bring something forward. I know the various contractor associations, I believe, are now in support of this bill. So With that, can I get a motion? Is there any other board comment first?
Vice Chair Mark, one question. I know it's already written in here, but is there a plan to clearly state was it included, where the work that can be performed versus just what's not?
Sure.
Yeah, what we've done is worked with the author's office on trying to be as specific as possible as to the work that can be done, tailoring that to the B2 classification the board approved. So I know initially it was like, this is work you can't do, but what can you do? And it's going to be more the minor type construction work that handy persons would do. And the hope is that once they start doing that work that's directly related to the B2 class, they'll eventually apply for and become a B2 licensed contractor.